Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast.
Welcome to episode 91 of the Passive House podcast. I'm Zack Semke, director of Passive House Accelerator, and it's great to have you here listening to us for the Passive House podcast. Our co-host Matthew Cutler-Welsh has the day off today, but we're joined by Mary James, the director of publications at the Accelerator, and Shaun St-Amour from our Passive House Accelerator live show. He's co-host of Construction Tech and Q&A concierge for the Project Showcase series. Today, we've got something special for you, a series of 6 short interviews that Mary and Shaun conducted with Passive House leaders and practitioners at the recent Passive House conference that took place in Victoria, BC. So welcome, Mary and Shaun. Mary, what's new for you?
Well, the latest issue of the Passive House magazine is being downloaded and available for reading today.
Woohoo! Congratulations. That's so exciting.
Excellent. We got weekend reading. This is perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And Shaun, what's new in your world?
Just working hard on building some houses and making sure that our team and all of our specialists are clear that we have a mandate of getting below 1 air change, because that's part of the step code 5 planning here in BC with our codes. So it's great that we have a company plan of getting to near Passive House and ensuring that we install all the Passive House principles in all of our projects. And we've started with the air barrier. We've already got HRVs mandated, and now working with our window companies to keep our U values as low as we go. So some exciting stuff as we transition a company from code building to high performance building.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, good work. So we have a lot of interviews to share with the audience. So I think we should dive in real quick here. Before we do, I want to quickly thank our sponsors. So a big thank you to our founding sponsors: 475 High Performance Building Supply, Bax Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minitaire All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stillcorp, and Zola Windows. Thank you too to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors and Proseco, and to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So big thank you to our sponsors. So for the first interview, we start with, appropriately enough, the CEO of Passive House Canada, Chris Ballard. So let's dive in.
Okay, welcome, Chris Ballard. Thank you for joining us here at the Passive House Canada conference.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation to the podcast.
It's been a really splendid conference, but we'd love to hear some more about what Passive House Canada in general has been doing. And so we'd like you, since this is a brief podcast, to highlight what you think the most significant accomplishment has been in the last year for the organization.
I think the most significant accomplishment has been to broaden our focus from building technology standard to one that is addressing public policy, government codes, that sort of thing. So we've really broadened who we are and what we do. And we've created a really great team at Passive House Canada to get that done. We've never done government relations to the degree we're doing now. Same with our communications, and we've expanded our practice from building standards to making sure they're implemented.
And in the next year, what's the next big thing that you're working on?
The next big thing is actually our strategic planning, which starts after this conference. So this conference, I hope, is a way of getting all of the directors and staff in the right frame of mind. And it's no mistake that we chose Passive House Canada in the face of climate change for the theme of the meeting, as a way of focusing our thoughts about how do we address climate change, how does Passive House Canada in the next 3 years really make a change, really make a difference in the area of climate change. So that's our focus, will be getting that strategic plan pulled together, figuring out where we're going, and get on the road.
Excellent.
And, I'm sure you've had many great moments here at the conference. If you could just highlight a couple of them.
I think high level, the best thing I've experienced is just getting out with people again, and Passive House people, and renewing acquaintanceships. I mean, I started Passive House after our big conference in September of 2019. And, then COVID came along early in 2020. So for me, this is the first time I've had an opportunity to meet so many people face to face. I think we're all tired of Zoom and GoToMeeting. So this has been the most important thing, is reconnecting, making new connections, and catching up.
Wow, I didn't remember that you only started in September 2019. What a time to come on board.
Yeah, that's what I said too. We've been through we've been through a lot. With COVID, we've faced a lot of challenges. A lot of good people moved along. We've brought a lot of good people on. Today we're stronger because of it, though. I'll tell you that for sure. It gave us an opportunity to really think about what's our mission, what's our vision, how do we get that done.
And has the organization itself grown in staff people, in numbers?
Yes. Don't ask me how many. I'm just the CEO. We have, I think we're at about 17, 18 full-time people now. Our teaching staff across Canada continues to grow as we offer more and more courses, and more people are interested in our courses. We'll continue to grow as long as we have a viable plan, a viable reason for being here. And a lot of our focus, as I said, we've brought on government relations people, more communications people, more social media people, in order to get the Passive House message out there, and to really try and talk to the policymakers and the politicians about what they need to start doing yesterday if we're to address this climate change crisis.
Well, great. Thanks for taking the time. It's really exciting to see that you're able to do a hybrid event again.
Yeah.
The fact that you have 150 people here, which is great.
Yeah, and that number again are on the internet watching. And the beauty of this type of event too is that anyone who's registered can go home or back to the office and watch all the sessions they missed. Yeah. So I foresee this will be the way we do things in future.
Well, I appreciate it, just because, again, there's lots of conversation about embodied carbon, and so that people can make choices about it.
Good.
So that's great that you guys were able to offer.
Well, thank you for your support, and thank you for your support.
Yeah,
nice to have you both here.
It's been great being here. As you said, it's so nice to be back at it in person and see people.
Well, and my head is spinning with all the stuff I've learned and the people I've talked to. Just 15-minute, half-hour conversations just fill the day with knowledge and ideas. And I'm going home with a pocket full of business cards.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great interview, Mary and Shaun. Mary, what was your takeaway?
Well, it's very exciting what Passive House Canada has accomplished and where they're headed. I just love that there's an influential organization helping steer climate policy in Canada like that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. And it's amazing. Those of us south of the border are envious to see the exponential growth of Passive House that's happening in Canada. And Passive House Canada is played such a key role there. How about you, Shaun?
It was really great to see all the people in the audience. There was like 150 people present and another 300 online. So it's great to see Chris after a few years, and I'm really excited to see where their strategic planning is going to take them now that they have kind of regathered and refocused. And I think there's going to be some great things that come out of Passive House Canada the next year.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise. So our next interview is with Maddy Kennedy-Parrott, who's building enclosure and building performance engineer at RJC Engineers. So let's take a listen.
Maddy Kennedy-Parrott. Welcome to the Passive House Accelerator podcast. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do with your current work?
Sure. I work for RJC Engineers. I am a building enclosure engineer, kind of also a building performance engineer. So I split my time about mostly in the building performance now, but have a lot of background in building enclosures. Now I'm working on a lot of energy modeling, a lot of thermal modeling, a lot of thermal comfort stuff. I'm trying to use my building envelope engineering background to leverage that in the building performance world.
And how did you get into building envelope and building performance work?
I grew up in Tokyo. My dad was a diplomat, so I was obsessed with buildings. I used to wander around just looking up. And then when I was graduating high school, I thought I wanted to be an architect. Turns out you have to have artistic skills to do that. I do not, but I'm really good at math and science. So I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something with buildings. And then as I went through school, I did my undergrad in civil engineering. It wasn't really for me, but that's not true. I enjoyed it. I did fine. But when I graduated, I had a really hard time getting a job. And I worked at a bar for a long time, and I ended up asking pretty much everybody with a pinky ring, "Oh, what do you do? Where do you work?" And I met a bunch of guys from RDH one night who just came in to work on a project or something. Yeah. And they told me about building science. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Like, I want to do that. That's what I wanted this whole time. Cool. And so I ended up kind of talking to them about it for a long time, and I went back to go get my master's in building science. So that kind of...
Great. And so then when was the first time that you got interested in Passive House?
It was actually at that event you put on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
That was sort of the first time I was really introduced to it. And I remember Scott Kennedy was there, and I remember meeting him and being like, "Oh my God, this man is the coolest." Yeah. And then I was working for a window manufacturer at the time, and so I was involved with a lot of the Passive House certification of their windows, and so I was doing a lot of thermal modeling. And then when I finally got an engineering job with that expensive degree, I ended up going to some, the Passive House courses and things like that. And then as part of my master's, I actually did a Passive House sort of self-directed studies course where I did a deep dive into Passive House. And I've just been hooked ever since.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about this lovely presentation. Cool. Just give us an overview of what you talked about and what you shared with the audience.
Sure. We did a research project that compared a typical retrofit that we would do as sort of like a deep energy retrofit at work to an EnerFit version of the same retrofit. So we took an existing building, we built a calibrated model of that building, which just meant that we could predict actual energy use rather than sort of the standardized code compliance energy models. And we applied our typical retrofit, and then we applied the EnerFit required retrofits, and then we just compared them. And so we were looking at how much more would an EnerFit cost, how much more energy savings can it get us, what the difference in sort of end uses was, what the difference in retrofit approaches were. It's kind of more of a thought experiment than a real project, but an interesting thought experiment for sure.
So have you done any actual EnerFit projects, been involved in any of those?
I have been involved in a couple where the client wants EnerFit at the beginning. We go through all the work to do the PHVP, we build it, and then they decide that they don't want to actually certify. And so I have not yet certified an EnerFit project, but I have worked on quite a few sort of deep energy retrofits that work in the PHVP but haven't been verified by a certifier.
Gotcha. But that's great though, because at least you've got the experience.
Yeah.
So now you're like, okay, well, we'll do the certification when we're there, but at least we've got some experience in the process.
Yeah.
What's been your takeaway from the conference so far? Now we're wrapping up day 2.
My takeaways from the conference are always kind of the same. I just reinvigorate my love of Passive House.
Yeah.
And I love to see sort of all the new projects that people are doing. Today was really interesting because there was a real Enerfit project that there was a presentation right after mine that sort of reiterated all the same things that we had said.
Yeah.
And so that was really validating. I just think that the biggest piece that we're really taking away from this is that we need to find funding to do these projects. That seems to be the biggest hurdle in every single case, like in every single project, is getting the funding to do Passive House and Enerfit is a hurdle, and something's got to give. But I don't know what that is.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get more Canadian funding from the national level to help get over the little hump.
Yeah.
And I mean, also getting owners and developers buying into Passive House.
Yeah.
So they want to do it too.
The thing is like with stratas, they want to do Enerfit. They want to do these big energy retrofits. They're so expensive.
Yeah.
It's hard. And you know, when you need a 2/3 vote or all those things, it can be really difficult to convince everybody to put that money on the line. And so grant programs that help specifically like I love existing buildings. That's where, I mean, new build is great and I think it's important, but my heart lies with existing buildings.
It's one of those things you're just too early for the market because it's coming.
I know.
And you'll be ready for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to position myself so that I'm the person to come to.
Well, that being said too, so what is RJC doing to help promote and kind of market themselves as a leader to help do these retrofits? RJC we've been around for a really long time. We're one of the oldest structural engineering firms in Canada. Yeah.
And then we've been doing the building enclosure piece for a long time as well. But our building performance team is still very new. We're only about 3 or 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is definitely a challenge of just getting the word out. Like, hey, we do energy models too. We have like a whole bunch of CPHDs on staff. So what we're doing is just trying to win projects, win the bids, because we want to work on these projects. We know we can do them. We know we're capable. Now we just have to prove it.
Excellent.
And RJC is involved in the Pembina Reframed initiative?
I think so.
You're not personally.
Yeah, life cycle analysis is more some of my colleagues'
Gotcha.
wheelhouses, but I have heard rumors of that, so I think that's true.
Great.
Cool.
Well, do you have projects lined up for in the next 6 to 12 months that are that you're really excited about?
Real projects or research projects?
Well, either or. I mean, again, sometimes the research is giving you the right skills to take on the new ones, right? So, yeah,
I've been doing a lot of research into thermal comfort. Like the heat dome was a really big thing.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the feedback we're hearing from a lot of tenants. It's like, hey, you said I was going to be comfortable when you energy modeled my building, and I was not comfortable.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of research into shading strategies, like exterior louvers and things like that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of really cool calibrated energy model projects that I'm working on. I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about them, but it's really neat to be part of these like feasibility studies where we actually are calibrating energy models, because that's something that isn't common in the industry to go to that extra level. And like I said, that's what I love to do. So calibrated energy models, I think, is probably my biggest excitement for all of my projects that have it.
Well, we're looking forward to getting a full project so that you can share more about it. So
even just
we'll hear more from you.
Yeah, even just deep energy retrofits. Like Enerfit is the goal, but we do a lot of
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Thank you for taking time to
no problem
connect with us and share your story.
Of course.
It's great.
Yeah. Pretty excited to find out it was you that did it. You kicked it off.
I think there's probably more, but I know. But again, it's just great how, in Vancouver, all of you think of like the last 20, 30 years of all the leaky buildings that we've already redone and now we have to redo them.
I know. And
now that we know.
Yeah. And now it's like we do a lot of like just, baseline energy, like, all your windows are leaking, so we have to replace all your windows. And then there's me like shouting in the corner.
Yeah. Make them pass those windows.
Fiberglass.
Yeah.
but they never
Make them
do.
better.
Yeah.
No. And then you just know, like, okay, that we missed on that one.
Yeah.
Add that one to the list that we have to fix again in 20
Keep
years.
on trying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's great stuff. Well, again, keep working hard, and thanks for taking time to connect with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Perfect.
Well, great conversation with Maddy. Mary, what thoughts do you have to share about that?
Well, I have to say that's got to be the best story I've ever heard about how you get into Passive House is working in a bar and meeting a bunch of guys from RDH.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I just, of course, am enthusiastic about the research she's been doing, comparing deep energy retrofits and EnerFits and how to, reduce the costs and make EnerFits more feasible for more buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shaun, you had no small role to play in her introduction to Passive House either. That was fun to hear.
Yeah, it was exciting because, again, we do a lot of these events and we don't know kind of the ripples that we create. And so my takeaway to everyone is if you're passionate about Passive House, we're a very collaborative group of individuals. And so start doing this in your own towns and neighborhoods and just start talking passives. You'll be interesting to see how you inspire different people. The best part of the whole thing too is she's really into retrofits, and we know retrofits are coming. It's going to be great.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, next up, we have a chat with Andrew Peel, who is founder and director of Peel Passive House Consulting.
Shaun, St-Amour, and I, Mary James, are speaking here with Andrew Peel from Peel Passive House Consulting. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to get into it. So what got you into Passive House? Take us back to those earlier days of what you were doing and what was that spark to get you into Passive House?
Well, I actually went to Germany to do renewable energy, to do a master's, because at the time, this was 2005, it was a cottage industry, couldn't get in. So I'm like, well, what can I do? Go learn at a place where, things have developed in renewable energy. And in that journey, as I was doing the master's, I realized there's all this great technology and work in renewable energy, and things were really starting to develop in the industry. But it's like, there's something missing here. I realize it's easier to save a kilowatt hour and find all these different ways of actually offsetting, or creating new ways of it. So that led me into energy efficiency, and then kind of just exploring options, found the Passive House Institute, and luckily found an option to do my thesis there, actually, right? So that's kind of what got me in there. I wasn't actually from a construction background. I was from an electrical engineering background. So it's a bit of a different journey, different path in life, but I'm glad I made it because, it's an amazing industry to be in, right? So, such a great contributor to so many aspects of, well-being, health, environment, right?
So you were such an early jumping into the business of being a Passive House consultant. What year was that? When you started your Peel Passive House?
Peel Passive House, 2012, 13-ish. I don't know when exactly I officially founded, but yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Yeah. I guess I'll have a drink tonight on that. Yeah.
We will.
Nice. So how has your business changed? Leaping over those 10 years, what's dramatically different today than 10 years ago?
The scale of the industry, just the types of projects, who's involved, especially on the client side, going from these kind of like do-gooder homeowners, like, I want to do my single family home. I've heard of this Passive House. Hey, I've heard you've worked on this. Okay, I'll help you out. Right. To private equity funded developers, seriously contemplating or actually developing, 200 to 500 unit, 50-story passive houses. It's not even a conception back 10 years ago, right? It's like, how do we get some people doing this, right? Actually, an early builder, local builder association, I went, they invited me to do a presentation on Passive House. And so I presented this kind of general intro to Passive House. This is 2013 or something. And then somebody at the end asked me, it's like, so how many passive houses are there in Canada? I'm like, there's one certified, right? Versus now where we've come, right? It's incredible.
So out of all those projects, do you have a favorite? Or do you have a bunch?
favorite. I really like the Clayton Community Center. I mean, okay, we're a bit biased because we helped work on it, but just the kind of innovative thinking and really in a very challenging environment with like huge occupant loads and stuff, really saying, oh, how can we really drive down, not just the envelope, innovative controls and stuff, how do we, and passive measures, other ones like natural ventilation, how do we really drive the energy? Like, you know, the kind of traditional passive house methods that we use in North America got us so far, how do we go even further, right, to really drive that down? So that was one of my favorite. Another one is so I don't want it to pick up. I'm gonna pick the ones I've been because they come to mind, the new ones, right? But the stepwise retrofit that we're working on in Ontario, interfit 20-story tower of like how do we crack the nut on this huge issue and opportunity in the existing building market, right? So really I like the projects that are really pushing things forward, learning on the spot, like how do we track this type of building or whatever.
But this also affects your team too, because you're also teaching your team. And so all of a sudden your company is growing and being innovative to support these new projects as you're helping the industry support. So I get how you'd call those your favorite because there's some intrinsic and extrinsic benefits to all of it. So that's great.
Yeah, definitely.
So how many people are there in your company now?
There's, I think, like 5-6 full-time. And then we've got just actually onboarded a couple of co-op students we're working with. Yeah, so it's a good bunch. Small still, but I don't see us like scaling big. Actually, I see us evolving a bit more to, you know, how do we continue in a even more meaningful way to support other companies doing this? Because we know, like, okay, the Passive House conference, it's great. You see familiar faces. Actually, one of the things I like is I'm seeing a lot of faces I'm not familiar with. So a whole bunch of people have gotten into the industry, which is exciting, but it's still a small group, right? Compared to like, I don't know, there's a big, my wife's going to a big, tech conference in Toronto. There's going to be, I don't know, like tens of thousands of people there. So we're just still tiny. So it's like, how do we get all these other companies doing Passive House and advocating and not just advocating, working on Passive House for clients that we're never going to get in front of because we're just not working in these firms or whatever, right? Like, how do we figure out how to support them, right? So I see our company evolving more in that direction of like really supporting others, not just through your kind of CPHC training or advanced training, but more how do we figure out how to get them off to the races. Yeah.
Great. So we're here in Victoria at the Passive House Canada Conference. You got a chance to speak. Give us a little summary of what you got to share with the group and your takeaway from being here and presenting. Great.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke today about demand controlled ventilation and the benefits. It's often either value engineered or not considered or incorporated in the project. And we're saying, well, you know, if you look at it on just a line item on a cost sheet, yeah, it's easy to remove, but actually there's knock-on impacts, right? So exploring what are those impacts and can you quantify the cost and other detriments to removing that, right? More generally, I really like the conference program. I think Passive House Canada in particular does a great job of curating the talks. So we get a good cross section of different topics. We don't get too many, threads going on, right? So you get an opportunity to see a good number of presentations, that are well curated, and I just find they're high quality. So
yeah. Again, it's great that it's still hybrid. So we had like about 30 or 40 in front of you, and there's probably another 30 or 40 sitting in their own offices connecting and asking you questions. So
that's great.
It's great to have the bigger space.
And just for people who aren't familiar with your business, I should have asked this earlier, but can you just give a rundown of what you do, what services you offer?
Sure. Yeah, we're diversified as you can, as much as you can, maybe in Passive House. We do Passive House consulting on projects. We are accredited Passive House certifier. We do a lot of training, particularly private training with companies like architect firms, mechanical engineering firms, and we do actually support manufacturers with component certification, right? So window frame manufacturers, ERV suppliers, and then we do a bit of like research in the industry to support adoption of Passive House as well.
So what's next for you?
I think this thread of like, how do we support other companies doing this, right? And, I don't have a full picture of what that looks like. And so it's really through the conversations we're having and the companies we're getting more involved with, exploring how best can we support them. So it's an evolving process, really.
Yeah. Great stuff.
And for people who are relatively new to the Passive House process, what is, I mean, everybody says, yeah, get everybody involved early on, but realistically, sometimes it's, the engineer's not available till X and the consultant's available Y. Is there an optimal flow for you with getting you involved in let's say for a small to medium-sized project, something that a newer practitioner might be taking on?
So you mean in terms of Passive House consultant, how would they get involved? It is challenging because we're known in Passive House and we're approached at different stages. Sometimes it's like they're well into construction drawings. You're like, well, how do you steer a ship that's halfway to port onto a right track, right? Yeah. So that we continue to, even though we have some best practices, we like to see both as a Passive House consultant and more broadly for the developer, the owner, the prime consultant, but we don't have the opportunities to implement that. So it's like, well, given the constraints you have, how do you adapt your process to best fit? So if we can't hire the construction manager until it's a traditional design bid build, well, can we bring in the support of an experienced Passive House construction manager in design assist capacity? Whether it's through us, can we incorporate that into our Passive House fees? Maybe in a larger project we can. Or work with the client, say, look, or the prime consultant, let's bring this in. This will benefit the team. Okay, we can't hire the CM that's going to build it, but let's bring in some experience. So it's like, well, we're stuck with our constraints. We try to push the clients to adopt best practices. And if that's not feasible, okay, how do we work with that and kind of find creative ways of, getting as close as we can to an ideal process? Yeah.
It sounds kind of like an encapsulation of the Passive House process, right? Yeah. You have certain constraints and you try to optimize on them all around.
Yeah. And like always, then it depends. It's the easy answer we always get, how things evolve. Well, we didn't want to keep you too long. Thanks for stopping by and connecting with us and telling your story and the experience here at Passive House Canada's conference in Victoria. And are you here for all 3 days? Or?
I am, yeah. I'm doing the bike tour as well.
Oh,
yeah, checking out the Skeena,
the UVic project.
UVic project. Yeah. Getting my projects mixed up. Yeah.
So many of them now.
Yeah, right? I know exactly. Well, exactly. So it's easy to.
Yeah.
And I don't directly touch everyone that's in my firm now. So I even somebody's like, we're working on that project. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
which is great. It's a sign, more people involved and a lot of projects going on, right? So.
Again, it's great to see how big your company's grown. And again, like you just said, you're just not able to get your hands in every single one now. You've got a team working with you to help grow this whole thing. So thank you for helping accelerate the Passive House world. And this is fantastic. So appreciate it.
No, Ray. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. Yeah.
Well, that was a fantastic conversation with Andrew Peel. He's always so fun to hear from. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, the retrofit tower, of course, the stepwise retrofit is such a great example. And his company has been a leader in so many ways. And it's great to see him being as successful as he is, because he deserves it.
Yeah, he's a very integral part of the movement here the movement of Passive House in Canada from the early beginnings. And he was off to see the UVic project, which again is one of the first projects we featured on the accelerator.
That was the proto happy hour event. That was before the Passive House Accelerator became involved. It was you and Monty and Maureen, right?
Yeah.
Made that one happen.
Figure out. I think we were just called the global happy hour,
or social, or yeah.
No, it's been so long ago I forgot about it. But great to see that building is complete, and that he got to go have a tour of it. And I mean, it's really great to see that Passive House companies have gone away from a few consultants and managing the PHP models and really working on the ground of the consulting. And he's now taken his firm to that next level where he's an entrepreneur having to manage and scale his business. So it's great that we're seeing these small servicing businesses scale to bigger things, and that they're only doing Passive projects to the point where they have full staff and a full team to support the industry. It's really exciting, the growth of Passive House.
Yeah, it is. It is. Great. So our next interview is with Graeme Verhulst, the founder and principal of Waymark Architecture. So let's take a listen.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here with Graeme Verhulst at the Passive House Canada Conference in Victoria, and we've got him in the hot chair. We're going to ask him a bunch of questions.
All right.
So first off, how did you get into Passive House?
Well, I could say I was an early adopter, I suppose. I took the Passive House training about 10 years ago and sought it out because I was aware of the standard before, and took the training. It all made sense. And after that, I was a convert and been working on making all of our projects Passive House ever since. And I think we're finally there.
Great. So here we're in Victoria, your hometown. How have you seen the Passive House movement grow in Victoria, and how did you play a role? And so a couple of questions for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's been an amazing change in the time that I've been practicing here. When I started, the first Passive House on Vancouver Island was like just being built, and since then I couldn't even tell you how many projects have been built since. There's been so many, and a few of our own projects too, which is nice. It's it's no longer the kind of conversation where people ask, "Oh, well, what is that? Oh, a building standard? Well, what does it measure? Is it passive solar? No, it's not the same thing." And those kind of very basic conversations were always what would come up in those early days. And now people just know it, and at least people in the building industry. And we have especially since COVID, a real uptick in our single-family custom home clients, and they might not know the technical aspects of what a Passive House is, but they are absolutely on board with doing a high-performance building and recognizing the benefits of that. And instead of like in the early days when people were just curious to know what it meant, now they're asking for it, even if they're getting a few of the details a little bit fuzzy. So the difference in awareness, the difference in number of people practicing it, difference in availability of materials, and down the chain through the different trades, they're more and more easy to find people who've done it before, or at least familiar with it, or eager to try it in a lot of cases too. It really has gone exponential, it seems, in our little region anyway.
So you did one of the first commercial buildings here in this area that was built to Passive House, the St-Amour?
Our Charter Telecom building.
Charter Telecom. Has that project sparked any other interest in commercial buildings?
Interestingly not, because that building just got its occupancy about just a couple of months before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so investment in commercial real estate was very cautious right after that. And but then people ended up spending a lot more time at home. And so we've pivoted to doing a lot of single family custom since then, but are definitely eager now that things are getting a bit more predictable to go after a few more commercial projects. I think that'd be great.
On that point too, just give us in the audience an update of kind of where you're at with your business and how it's come about, and just give us an idea of what services you provide.
Great. Yeah. We are an architectural firm. Started about 7 years ago. I've grown into a team of 5 people now. Still feels small and intimate. We're very much a boutique firm where really getting to know our clients, their aspirations and goals and values and constraints and all of that, and having that kind of deep understanding of what it is that is a successful project to them is really important to us, and then translating that into a building. And also along the way, we are, we've made good relationships with a lot of builders around town too, and we can assemble a complete project team, even do sort of more overall project management, not just the architectural part. Great. And so we're happy to help people who want a better building to live in or to work in.
Awesome.
And do people approach you for deep energy retrofits, or are you doing mostly new builds?
The majority of our work is new builds, but we do have a few retrofit projects on the go. In fact, one of them is that we're doing right now is quite interesting. It is in a heritage building. And so there's all kinds of constraints that go along with heritage buildings. And so we're looking at finding ways to get an improved energy efficiency and still being on the right side of all of the heritage rules. And that's an interesting one. It won't be EnerFit, but it will be a substantial improvement from what they're doing now. And one of the things that I'm excited about in that project too is we're looking at measuring the embodied carbon impact as well. So that's a huge conversation piece. And there's a lot of people who assume that doing retrofits is the greenest option because you save all of the embodied energy. And that might be true. I don't know if it's always true. And in this project, which we don't have all of those answers for yet, but we're intending to do all of that analysis. And I'm really keen to see what the result is.
That's great. And speaking of embodied carbon, is there a particular tool that you're using that you've tried out to try and figure that out?
We've been looking at a couple of different tools. I played around with, the name is escaping me right now. Athena, that's what it is. Yeah. There's also the BIM software we use has introduced a embodied carbon calculation tool that we have only just kind of gotten a little bit familiar with, and we'll start to play around with it soon. So we haven't really settled on a methodology yet for that, but it's
exciting that you have choices.
I know, it really is.
Yeah, that's great. And are there any other Passive House products that you have found have simplified your life?
One of the things that I'm really excited about is prefabrication. That has really, really sped things up. We have one project that was just it was a panelized prefabrication. Collective Carpentry, who also has a presence here at the conference, was the ones who did it. And they went from just a foundation to structure and envelope pretty much done minus the windows in 4 days. Yeah. And that was fun to see. And so we're gonna definitely do some more projects like that and get more into doing things prefabricated. I think there's all kinds of benefits.
And did you find with that particular project that you had to modify the design to make it more accessible for prefab, or were you happy with the fact that Passive House creates a tighter envelope and a nicer thermal envelope, so then it kind of leads to prefabrication, and then you get the structure, the insulation, and the membranes all together. And like you said, within 5 days, it's now up. Did you have to modify your design to make that work?
We always had prefabrication in mind on that project. It was a bit of a slow burn because there was all this city process that we had to go through. It was a small lot subdivision. So there was public hearings and back and forth with planners, and all of that stretched the timeline out. So yeah, big contrast between building up in a week and then the long stretch to get the permits in place to do it. Yeah. But even going back, we didn't actually engage the prefabricators until fairly late in the process because, as you say, simple enough envelope shape that we were confident that you could panelize it. Yeah. And so we didn't really have to modify the design really at all. And they were able to work with what we had designed and figure out where the panel breaks would go and how it would all stack together. And that actually went quite smoothly.
Great. That's great. So now you're here at the conference for Passive House Canada. Is there some particular aspect that you really enjoyed the conference so far?
One comment that was just in the opening session really got my attention. I think it was Scott Kennedy who said it, that Passive House really started with a very much a focus on the comfort and hygiene requirements. And those same comfort and hygiene requirements are translating into resilience as we're looking at heat waves especially, which is, having experienced that one last year in this part of the world was impactful. Yeah. And I think it's just something that it is a message that a lot of people need to hear, because it hasn't necessarily been the focus of communication yet. But resilience in the face of climate change, the theme of the conference, really is important, and Passive House has a solution to it. Like, building owners deserve predictable and low energy bills. Building occupants, who are sometimes the same people, also deserve to be comfortable in all situations. To have, their home being a place of refuge, a refuge from the heat sometimes, a refuge from the cold and a power outage, or whatever it happens to be. And of course, everyone deserves real solutions to climate change. And Passive House is all of those things.
Great. Well, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with us.
My pleasure.
I'll just ask one more question. We can cut and paste later on.
Sure.
What's next with the Waymark Architecture? What do you guys have on the boards? What can we look forward to seeing in the rest of this year, 2023?
One of the things I'm excited about is actually wearing a new hat. I'm going to try to be a developer as well as an architect.
Great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Because you have to convince the developer, because you're it. So
yeah, exactly. We just circumvent that whole education and getting people on board and convincing them of the ideas that just seem self-evidently the right way to go to me. Yeah. So Mark Bernhardt actually is one of our partners in a project in Nova Scotia. We're going to seek CMHC funding. It's going to be an affordable housing project. It's going to be certified Passive House, and we're still in the early stages, so we don't have a lot of details yet, but it's exciting.
Wow. Okay, bringing cold climate over to the East Coast with West Coast knowledge.
Yeah.
Sounds like an exciting project for all partners involved.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
That's great.
Thanks, Graeme.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that was fun to hear from a Victoria local about what's going on at the site of the conference and how Passive House has developed so much in the last 10 years. What are your reflections on that?
I love seeing the trajectory of his firm's work, because when I first talked to him a few years ago, it wasn't that long ago, he'd done 2 Passive House projects, the Charter Telecom and one other single family. And at that time, it was still difficult to get people interested in Passive House, get his clients interested in Passive House. And now, as he said, he's passed all the basic conversations about Passive House, and it's just accepted. So that was great to hear.
Yeah, he's a real leader in Victoria, BC, and Canada. And, the Charter Telecom is a very intriguing project because it's Passive House, includes the mass timber, and he really focused on some of the embodied carbon conversations. And now, we're seeing the trend of looking at how Passive House is resiliency. It's about comfort and quality and health. And he's able to, rework some of the language to ensure that Passive House does get to everyone, because we all know the benefits of it. And he's really working hard to scale things in those directions.
Indeed. Great. Well, next up is a chat with Ruffy Ruan, who's Passive House design lead at Impact Engineering. We had a bit of a microphone issue at the start of this one, so apologies for that, but it's a great conversation. So let's dive in.
Okay, well, welcome, Ruffy Ruan, and to our Passive House Accelerator podcast. And can you just introduce yourself a little? Tell us what you do for work.
Yeah, sure. My name is Ruffy Ruan, and I work in Impact, and I lead the Passive House and the building performance team for the firm. And I have a quite variety of background. I started my career as a sustainability consultant in London, United Kingdom, and then worked there from sustainability consultant to mechanical engineer. And then recently, about 4 years ago, I moved to Canada, and I worked. in Integral before for about 3.5 years. And now I started get interested in building performance design and trying to use energy modeling to understand how building performance in both, I guess, virtual and real life. So that's my current trying to develop, grow this business in impact engineering.
And when did you first hear about Passive House, and how did you get involved in Passive House?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I worked in UK for about 12 years. And when I first come across Passive House, it was about 10 years ago. And it just started the trend in London. Because in London, the grid is completely different to here, like in BC. And it's more like the gas, the carbon intensity from the electricity is much higher than the gas. So there's a lot of push or motivation on the building envelope instead of, say, just electrification, because the grid is not that clean. So at that time, there's a lot of, I guess, like firms trying to start to push the envelope to go to next level. And I remember the first architecture practice I worked with is called Archetype. And they are very passionate and very focused on like Passive House. And they only do Passive House project, similar to Cornerstone. And when I first got into, I was really impressed by how much data and how many data and how precise you have to like basic input. So like I'm an engineer, like I'm always trying to strive for accuracy, but I feel like Passive House just go to the next level. So I was really inspired by the level of the attention to details and the push to boundary in the Passive House project. So that's the first time I come across. And I remember my first project is a school. So we do Passive House certified school. And then it was really good, like as education piece for students using the building.
Great. I'm going to edit this out, but can you move this down a little because your necklace is coming up.
Okay.
That's good. So you gave a presentation today on heat pumps and all-in-one heat pumps versus heat pumps separated from HRVs or ERVs. Can you just sort of give a little wrap-up about what that was about?
Yeah, sure. So recently we just come across this product, and it was supposed to be a magic box, because instead of traditional heat recovery units and heat pump units, this product actually combines both into one. And as I was a mechanical engineer, so a lot of time I spent time coordinating the mechanical equipment with architects. So I know like the more equipment you specify, the more time you spend on coordinate. And, it's always a little bit like battle or like high-seek games trying to find these like spaces for the mechanical equipment, because, people don't really want to see them. It's not that pretty, unfortunately, but it does the function. And so this all-in-one product has its beauty of remove basically multiple equipment and just have one unit. So imagine like on the rooftop, one used to have all these mechanical condensers trying to, dissipate the heat. And then now it suddenly can turn the whole roof space into amenity space with a swimming pool or like greenhouses or stuff like that. So I think that's the appealing part. And also I think this product is very useful for both new construction and existing building, because not only it can provide ventilation and heating, it also has the cooling function. And we all know the climate is getting hotter and hotter. So with the function of cooling, it can really make the space become more climate resilient. So,
yeah, especially for existing buildings, that's really useful.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know about you, but this was my first conference in person in a while. And what was your key takeaway here?
Yeah, I think it was just like, like for me, like I like to talk to people, and you get these like adrenaline when you're talking to people in person, even like delivering presentation. Like in the past 2 years, the only opportunity we have is to deliver a presentation like online. So you don't really get like I guess the energy from the audience. You are more like speak to a screen, which is completely different interface. So I think the key takeaway is, and you really feel the passion about from the audience and also just from the people you talk to, and they're passionate about Passive House, and they're like, they're very inspirational and motivation to go to next level. So yeah, it was really nice to connect with all these people, share the same vision and passion.
And do you have a project or projects that you're working on over the next 6 to 12 months that you're going to be focused on that follows up on your research? Or
yeah, so I'm currently working on 2 projects. Like one of the projects is part of Reframe initiative. So you probably heard about it, and because you published article also. And yeah, we are basically the mechanical engineer for the shuttle. So yeah, that's when we're trying to test different technologies, and this all-in-one HRV was one of the bundle design. So I think that's going to be very interesting because we work with other design teams and trying to find out the most optimal solution, not just energy perspective, but financial and scalability, and also trying to minimize disruption to people. And we know new construction is important. Retrofit is equally important because we have a lot of existing building needs to have improvement. So I think that's a very exciting opportunity.
Yeah. So have you been participating in the workshops?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has that been?
Yeah, it was good. We usually have 1 per month. And yeah, that basically it's kind of it's very collaborative because, you just don't work for your project. You actually see other people presenting their projects and with similar type of buildings. And it's interesting to see sometimes there's a lot of similarity between the design, but there's also the differences. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, and it's something you never experiencing usually. It's not a very usual project type, because what I'm used to is to get a project and deliver it from the beginning to the end. And this one is more spend a lot of time during the conceptual and get a lot of education from different perspective. Not just mechanical design, but you learn a lot about trauma design, oriented design, or the climate resilience. And so I found, I learned a lot from these workshops.
That's great. I'm excited about that initiative because, again, as you mentioned, the collaboration aspect. Hopefully we'll be able to come up with designs that are, more easily applied to many buildings.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking with you. I really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that interview, both of you. So Mary, could you start by filling us in a little bit about the Reframe initiative?
The Reframed initiative is an initiative of the Pembina Institute to jumpstart mass retrofits in BC. And as part of that initiative, they have had a series of design workshops. I think they had 9 with 6 design teams, each of which are working on a 3 to 4 story building, multifamily building. So it's a really exciting project because all those workshops are collaborative with the 6 design teams. And I think great things are going to come out of it as to how to implement these retrofits in a cost-effective way. So it's exciting that she's part of the team, and she's just doing great work.
Yeah, excellent. How about you, Shaun?
Yeah, it's great. The things that's happening, and even with Reframed, the technique and the technology coming out of it is great. And I mean, it kind of sums up a bit of the conference. The conference had a lot of new faces and new speakers, and this is another one who is kind of really taking the Passive House by storm, and really motivated, elegant speaker, really passionate about her craft. And I mean, again, retrofits are coming, and we've got some really good individuals in that niche that's going to help push things. And this is one.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so our final interview is with Rick Gregory. He's project director at Group Brivia. So let's dive into that one.
Welcome, Rick Gregory from Brivia Group. And can you just tell us a little bit about what Brivia Group does?
Yeah, Brivia is a developer that was started by Ken Lee, and he came to Canada as a refugee from Cambodia. The company has evolved since he started it to a major developer in Toronto, in Montreal. They're building the 4 largest projects in downtown now are all being built by Brivia, and we've been acquiring land throughout the Montreal area. We've expanded into Quebec City over the last few years. We've expanded into the Toronto market as well, and we want to become national. So we picked up 2 major properties in Vancouver. One is the site of the Curve, and the other is a 9-acre parcel in the very geocentric center of West Vancouver.
Great, and tell us about why your project, the Curve, is aiming for the Passive House standard. What made Brivia Group decide to target Passive House?
Well, the Brivia bought the property about a year ago, and at that point, it was already into the process of rezoning, and had been approved by council as a passive house project. This was an area that Brivia felt was important to get into for a number of reasons. One, it was a door into the Vancouver market, and they felt that this building, because of its form, would be a symbol to sort of the future, and the passive house tied into their vision for the future.
Excellent. And so we're here in Victoria at the Passive House Canada Conference. What's been some of your takeaways now that we're into wrapping up day 2?
Well, they say if you go to a lecture and learn one thing, it's been a good lecture. And I think each of the lectures I've gone to, I've learned multiple things. So it's been certainly a success from that perspective. But I think for me, it's about meeting the people that are here, and we were just talking to a gentleman we're out for tender right now on our cladding package, and he's represents a German company that's trying to make inroads into North America. Mm-hmm. They've got 4 factories in Germany that produce exactly what we're looking for. So we're going to add him onto our bidders list. On our project, the cladding is the biggest challenge by far of the building. Most of the rest of the building is not standard, but is from an engineering perspective is all quite doable. So it's just meeting the people and being able to meet. When I was in my last lecture, I sat beside a banker that happened to be the lender on our project for the Curve. I hadn't met him before, and so it's nice to cross paths with people, and it's a small world in this community.
Well, in your talk you gave today, you told a very heartwarming story about the Keeling Curve. Would you mind repeating that?
Oh, it's funny because I came outside and somebody says, "Well, that curve you showed, what was it?" And I said, "Oh, I guess I forgot to lead into it," assuming that most people know what it is. Keeling was a chemist, an American chemist, who discovered how to measure very accurately carbon dioxide. In fact, so accurately he could measure to 1/100th of a part per million. And so once he had established how to measure it, he had an idea to measure it in a place where it's undisturbed by cities and pollution. And so he went to the very top of Mauna Loa and sent a balloon up with his gizmo that would capture a sample of air and bring it back down, and then look at it through his equipment. And so he did this every day, starting in 1958. Wow. He did it every day, and at the end of the month, he would average it out and plot it on a graph. And so he kept doing that, and he noticed that after a couple of years, it was very distinct. There was an up and down pattern, and it was like the world breathing, in the summer and out in the winter. And it had to do with the planet having most of the land mass in the northern hemisphere. And so when it's summer in the northern hemisphere and leaves all come out, they absorb CO2 and the reading drops way down. And then in the winter when the leaves fall, it climbs again. And so he noticed after a few more years that there seemed to be a trend that it looked like it was actually increasing, but he wasn't quite sure. And I think by the mid-60s, he was convinced there was what they termed global warming at the time, and it was pretty indisputable in terms of the track of carbon dioxide, and it was at a fairly shallow angle, and it's been steepening up every year. So the increase we have is a little bit more this year than it was last year, and so on and so on. So I knew nothing about the Keeling curve. My son, when I moved back here from Dubai in 2004, asked me if I'd heard of it. I said no. He said, well, you should take a look at it. And so I looked at it and was fairly alarmed by it. And so I plotted it up. I got the raw data from Mauna Loa and threw it onto a spreadsheet and graphed it, and then played around with graphs to see the best fit curves. And I got one that fit pretty good. And then I thought, well, we knew the value back in the mid-1800s. And so by using that as a distant point, you can get a very accurate exponential sinusoidal curve that passed through the data very well and mapped onto it. I would map the amount of error each month in terms of what the values were. And in 2004, I bet a good friend in Toronto that we were going to pass 400 parts per million in May of 2014. I bet him a beer. And I won the beer. If you look at the data, in 2014, we, for the first time, went through 400. So I knew it was very accurate. So after 2014, I would still plot it up, but I wasn't really paying that much attention. I knew where it was headed. But a few years after that, I noticed the readings were starting to climb above this sort of scary curve, and wondering if it was just a blip. But after 6 years now of it, it's not just an irregular season. It's pulling away from this curve, and so it's just a reminder to me that that in my industry, there's not a lot of things you can do. You can't, in terms of the rising CO2. It's I still drive a fossil fuel car. But I do spend my day trying to figure out this building that we're building now, and it's one thing that I can do, and I think I can rally the troops to focus on what's important each day and move the project along. So that's.
And on the future projects that you have, coming up, will you apply Passive House to those? And do you think this will become a standard for your company, or how do you evaluate it?
I was impressed. The architect, it's too bad he wasn't able to join us today other than through his taped call, but Tom Wright, the concept architect in this building, when he got involved, he told me he will never do another project that's not Passive House. And that inspired me, and I thought I will endeavor to do that as well.
Great.
That's great. Well, it's wonderful that you came and joined us. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, very exciting project, and thanks for taking time out.
Well, thanks for the invite. My pleasure.
All right. Well, that anecdote about the Keeling curve from Rick Gregory was a really interesting one. I think, we're also familiar with the shape of that curve. And it never occurred to me to actually crunch the numbers myself. And I was reminded of how much I love this community of data geeks. That was a great story. So what are some reflections on that conversation?
Well, I was just excited to hear about such a large project targeting Passive House. It's just so indicative of where Passive House is at in Vancouver, BC, and which, of course, Shaun knows much more about, being from Vancouver.
Yeah, it's great, the policy that has occurred here in Vancouver and the growth of Passive House in the region in the last 10 years. And this building will be, again, another landmark building that we have in Vancouver, but the fact that it's Passive House and the heights that it's reaching, is really allowing other other communities around the world to kind of push into the elements that, all buildings, small, big, medium, should all be Passive House. And I'm not so keen on like the tallest and the, those kinds of things, but it's great that we are all pushing into the sky, into the heights of how Passive House should be incorporated. We'll see more towers in BC. So we'll get past the first one in Vancouver to like the first one on Nelson, the first one on Howe, and the first one, on Pacific. This is what's kind of happened in Vancouver is we've had a big push in Vancouver, and it's now spread to Victoria. And, the amount of projects that were showcased on the bike tour after the conference, people really got to see a lot of really exciting projects around the region. And again, it's really now going across Canada. So we'll see what else Passive House Canada has in the next year with their promotion work and education. And it was great to have people in person to connect and collaborate with. But it was also great that they continued with a hybrid model. And so they had double the amount of people that were able to connect and learn and understand what some of the changes and some of the new things that are happening in the Passive House world.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to another key North American Passive House organization. The Passive House Network is doing its conference right now, and it's also a hybrid conference. So the first day was Friday, June 10th, the day that we're recording this podcast session. And the second day will be Friday, the June 17th. And that day will be both online and in person, and then followed on Saturday, June 18th with a bunch of project tours. I will be able to do those tours. I cannot wait. And I'm going to be visiting a tower in Boston, the Winthrop Center, as well as 3 other projects. So that's going to be a lot of fun. A couple other events on the horizon for the Passive House Accelerator. On Passive House Accelerator Live this Wednesday, we have a project showcase edition. It will be featuring the Northern Liberties Passive Row House project. We've got 4 speakers to talk about this really cool project on a very tight site, really creative solution making. So we hope you'll join us on Wednesday for that. And then the next week, we have a Passive House component spotlight with Innotech Windows and Doors. Mike Cairns will be joining us to talk about how to get the most from your windows and doors. So that's something to put on your calendar as well. That'll be Thursday, June 23rd. At 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Mary and Shaun, I just really want to thank you for capturing these interviews, and for those of us who weren't able to make it to the Passive House Canada conference in Victoria this year, to give us a little glimpse into what was going on there. It sounded like it was a really great and powerful event.
It was just very exciting to be there. And as Shaun said, get to talk to people in person.
Yeah. Again, in the Passive House Accelerator world, we've met a lot of people across the globe virtually. And I got to meet Mary in person for the first time, as well as other people that were really proud of the work that we do with the accelerator. So again, kudos to the team at the accelerator, and kudos to everyone for showing up with all the different events we have. So the community is strong and we're growing. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Thank you, Shaun. And thank you, Mary. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Passive House Podcast. We'll have a new exciting interview for you next week. So please tune in then. Take care.